As we all know, India is rising in many ways. India is moving rapidly into emerging economy status and as a global power. However, some of the chronic problems that India has faced over the decades, problems of rural poverty, hunger, malnutrition, continue to be problems, major problems today. And while facing these chronic problems, India is also facing new problems on the food security front. Problems of rising obesity, rising levels of non-communicable diseases, diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, etc. So we're facing food security challenges on two fronts. On the front of hunger and malnutrition, a traditional problem, and an emerging problem of rising overweight and obesity. The way in which one addresses both the problems is very similar. It's to provide significantly higher levels of diversity in the food system, improved access, improved affordability to food that's more nutritious, vegetables, fruit, livestock products, dairy products, etc., that enhance the overall nutritive value of the food system in India. As we think about what's been happening to food security, it's important to look at what's been happening to incomes. As we know, per capita incomes have risen, but they haven't risen all across the country uniformly. There's enormous diversity within the country on income levels and on overall economic growth and economic development. And one finds that the food security problem is very much similar to the stage of economic development. And even now, we see that over 40% of Indian children continue to be stunted. On the other hand, if you look at the same decade and you look at obesity levels, you see that obesity has more than doubled among male populations across the country. That's not just a food security challenge, but it's also a major public health challenge. When you take a spatial look at the problem, you find that the problem of stunting tends to be very concentrated in the poorer, the more lagging states of the country, whereas the problem of rising overweight and obesity is becoming an issue in the more developed, the more progressive, the higher income states. Part of the reason for this is that our food supply system has not been proactive enough in terms of enhancing the diversity of foods that are available. Not just available in quantity, but available at prices that are affordable to the poor. And I think that's the fundamental food policy challenge that we are facing in India today. Quite a bit of discussion in India today about the need to increase yields and total factor productivity, improve cropping intensity, etc. And yes, talk about diversification. But I think the strategy around how to do this is still very limited. And I think what we need to do is take a much closer look at the different agroecologies in India, the different cropping systems in India, and target specific technological and policy interventions relative to those cropping systems. And this map shows you the dominant cropping systems that exist across the country. The opportunities for increasing productivity in rice and wheat in this particular part of the country, in Punjab, Haryana, etc., are quite limited. They're already at very, very high levels of productivity. And so the opportunities here are much more in looking beyond rice and wheat, looking at diversification into other crops. Whereas as you get towards the more eastern part of the Indo-Gangetic plains, then one can still see significant opportunities for growth and productivity for the staples such as rice and wheat. But the big story is actually looking at the central part of India, all the way from Telangana up through Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, up into Gujarat. These are areas which were traditionally very poor, very low agriculture productivity, but we've seen dramatic changes in these areas with growth in cotton production, oilseed production, soybean in particular. And I think the opportunities for further enhancing productivity in these areas, looking both at cotton and oil seeds, is significantly. The other big opportunity that I see for enhancing productivity is looking at the sort of western side of the country, going north from Tamil Nadu up through Karnataka, Maharashtra, up into Rajasthan. And this is the zone that has core cereals such as millets, sorghum, etc., and also pulses and maize. I think the opportunity for enhancing productivity in these crops is enormous. What we need is better technologies, better management policies, better management practices, better price policies that enable farmers to start enhancing productivity. Finally, the eastern part of the country, the part of the country that still survives on one crop of rice a year, will continue to be a major challenge for us. So the potential for increasing productivity is enormous within the country. But what we need to do is be very careful about how you target different interventions and different policies relative to particular agroecologies. One needs to look also at opportunities for enhancing rural incomes by improving non farm employment opportunities. I see the biggest opportunity primarily in looking at ways in which we can connect smallholder agriculture systems to urban markets, urban food markets, where the demand is growing, and connecting farmers to urban food value chains. Looking at ways in which one can have post harvest operations, post harvest processing, rural enterprises around high value commodities, etc., that feed into urban food value chains, urban supermarkets, etc. And finally, one needs to look at policies that explicitly promote rural women's empowerment, because I think empowered women tend to then have families that are healthier, that are more nutritious.